universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Welcome to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo, Dr. Shirley and medium Kelly White. Two perspectives, one world. This is Both Sides Now.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Both Sides Now. I'm Dr. Shirley.
And I'm medium Kelly White.
And tonight we have a fantastic show for you. Who's on
gosh.
tonight?
We have a very special guest in the house. We have an incredible musician, writer, television producer, an all-around Renaissance man, and spiritual experiencer, Bill Cinque.
Incredible crowd you have here tonight. Very spontaneous.
It's our spiritual crowd.
I like it.
Yeah.
And welcome back, Bill, from your latest tour with Neil Diamond.
Thank you very much.
Which
Got home
we
a
will
couple of weeks ago.
We will hear that story soon. But you've gone through so many incredible things that I don't even know where to start. Where should we start?
I'd like to start with, frankly, about the walk in the park.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. Okay.
Let's
Good
start
idea.
there so then we can
Before I just
go
jump
into
right in.
to the walk in the park.
So excited about that story.
There's so many exciting things. I was born in New York City. Mm-hmm. When I was about 5 years old, we moved just north of the city to Westchester County to Yonkers, New York, if anybody is familiar with that. It was a, I guess, tough neighborhood, not a terrible place, but I mean, it was kind of a rough and tumble neighborhood, so to speak. And I grew up there. That's when I first started playing music. I started playing music when I was 19 professionally, and I'm 57 now, and I haven't stopped yet. So that's most of it.
Okay.
That's fantastic to do something that you love, that you're passionate about your whole life.
Absolutely, positively. I get up every morning with a purpose. You know, it's a great feeling.
That is fantastic. Wow. So what about this park story that I haven't heard about yet?
Well, which is this the one that ended with head trauma?
That's the one.
Okay.
I'm always interested, folks, in head traumas.
That's right.
Somebody's had a head trauma. I want to know all about it.
That is your area of expertise.
It's my area. And when I heard about this particular story that you're going to share with us, I immediately went to, this is how you've become spiritual.
That could be. I mean, I'm learning as I go. You know, this is kind of a goofy story, but it really did happen in Yonkers, New York. I should tell you that to this day, I've really never had a drink. I've never had a beer. I've never had a glass of wine. I've never had a cigarette.
Wait, and you're a musician?
Yeah.
Wait, so you and Don?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
right.
Don Marquise and myself, yeah. And so the reason that comes into play here is not everybody in my neighborhood could say that, to say the least. And so I was in this little park that we used to play stickball and that kind of stuff when I was about 14 or 15. Actually, the date, it was the last day of April 1973. So I was in whatever that would be, 9th grade, I guess. And
You're about 15, 14, 15?
Yeah. And it's kind of, there's a girl who was drunk, brought a steak knife to the park because she was going to essentially stab her boyfriend.
Oh, okay.
So that gives us kind of some setup. That's just a typical Monday night in Yonkers, New York.
Oh, God, Cyril.
Okay.
So in the corner of the park, there used to be like a spotlight, not just a street light, but a spotlight that the police put up so that there wouldn't be this dark corner of the park. Of course, the kids in my neighborhood would subsequently throw a rock and break the street light so they could sit in the corner and drink and smoke and do drugs without being seen. Okay. So it was kind of off the street. So this girl comes with this knife saying that she's going to stab her boyfriend. And I took the knife and stuck it in the dirt behind a park bench in the dark so no one would get hurt. So let me repeat that. I took the knife and stuck it in the dirt so no one would get hurt. You already know how this story ends.
Right. And she was a classmate of yours?
Yeah, friend of mine. Now, there were 30 people in the park, and everybody's drinking and smoking and doing God knows what, except for me. I started to leave to go home to watch the basketball game with my dad. We were going to have, just a night with just watching basketball and eating pizza or something. And my friends were asking me to stay. And I kept saying, no, I have to go. And I was about, I'm guessing 20 feet away. So I was about maybe the length of this room away. And I heard this noise. And I heard the noise before I really felt any pain, but it felt like I got hit in the head with a rock, almost like if you banged your head on a door or something. And I looked up, and here is the blade of a knife.
Oh my goodness!
Sticking out.
Oh my God.
I mean, like
Of
out
your
of
forehead?
Oh, this is right
the
out of
middle of your forehead?
Wile E. Coyote, right out of Roadrunner, but bang, that kind of thing, right here. Right. Matter of fact, you can
So
still
you're
see just a
right
hint
near
of
your
a scar.
temporal lobe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, whatever you call that.
Did the girl get mad because you were leaving? I mean, what?
It wasn't the girl that threw it. It was a friend of mine. Again, South Yonkers, New York. These were my friends. Okay,
These were all your
the
friends.
crazy woman who wanted to, stab her husband.
Premeditated murder
Yeah.
girl.
And then my friend who
The
threw a knife in the
borderline
dark. Yeah, this is exactly. You're getting a feel for my formative years.
Oh my goodness!
So
he threw it at you like to play, or he
we
can't be
will
playing.
never know that. We will never know exactly what he was thinking. I don't hold anybody accountable for what they did under those circumstances. Everybody was drinking and smoking and.
But did you talk to him? Like, did you say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to throw a knife at you"?
Well,
that it
we
was
got
gonna
around
go
to that.
in?
We got around to
Your
that. Oh, it
body?
went in. Yeah, it went in. It went in actually. When I tell this story, usually somebody takes out a steak knife and kind of measures it. It actually went in 1 inch and 1/8. Not 1/8 of an inch, but 1 inch and 1/8.
Oh my God.
Into your bone and got stuck.
Yeah, what happens
Oh, my.
is if you look at, I'm not good with medical terminology, but that part of your brain, if you look at it like the cerebellum or whatever, it kind of looks like a fist. It kind of goes like this.
Yeah, this is the top of your
It
brain.
went through the skull, and the knife,
Yes.
and it kind of went like that. I mean, I don't know if this is visual enough for you to see it, but it kind of went and just kind of curved up.
So for those people that are listening to this later, you're showing the front of your brain, and the knife went in through the skull and kind of went up when it hit the brain.
So, well, yeah, I guess it didn't quite hit the brain, I guess would be the best way to say it, right?
I see. Okay.
So,
My.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable story.
It was quite a thing.
Wow.
So that was right there. Now, all of a sudden I said, hey, can somebody give me a hand here? And no one can really see what's going on because it's dark and they're drunk. One friend of mine comes over and can't believe what he's looking at.
Wow.
He starts screaming. Women start crying. People are passing out. People are getting sick.
Oh.
It was a nightmare. I mean, there were 30 people.
Wow.
So I'm walking. I had to walk across Broadway. That's the same Broadway in New York City. It goes straight north through Westchester.
Really?
I had to walk across Broadway in traffic. I put my hands out and stopped traffic and walked across the street to get to my house
The knife sticking
with
out
the
of your
knife
head.
sticking out of my head.
Oh my.
Were you
God.
panicked out of your mind?
That's such a great question because I hesitate to admit this, but my friend Jeff was walking with me, and he was looking at it. We stopped under a light, and he was looking at it, and he was, freaking out. Yeah. I started to walk across Broadway because my apartment with my family was 100 feet off Broadway. As I was walking across the street, we couldn't wait for the light to change, so I just walked out and just stopped traffic. And this woman saw me, and she's sitting in her car, and she's turning white looking at this because I look like a freak, And I leaned over into her car, and I said, what's the matter? You've never seen a guy with a knife in his head before? I did that. I actually did that. This poor woman, wherever she is. And my friend starts screaming at me saying, can you ever be serious? You have a knife in your head, So I walked up.
Oh my God, Cheryl.
Yeah. I don't want to make this too long a story, but
Whoa.
so I walk up the stairs to my apartment. I go in, and here is my dad, who is my wonderful, big fat Italian dad who has been making lasagna all day so we could sit down.
Yeah.
The only day of my life that my mother was not in the house. My mother was a housewife. She got talked into some PTA meeting or something, and she left the house for the first time.
Oh my
I
God.
come walking in with my back to my dad saying, I'm okay. Before you turn around, I'm okay. Don't flip out.
Wow.
And I turned around with the knife sticking out of my head.
Oh.
So
Wow.
he,
Was there 911 back then, or what happened?
well, I guess there was, but my sister and her boyfriend were there. And they put me in the car and drove me to the hospital. And we're running red lights. And a cop pulls up alongside us. And my sister's yelling out the window saying, look, we have to get him to the hospital. And the cop recognized me from just being a neighborhood kid. And the cop leans over and says, and recognizes me and says, Billy, so help me, if this is a joke, I'm going to kick your ass. This is really, and he really actually said that. Yeah. So I go from.
So funny.
So again, and this is all within 3 blocks of where it happened. So
Right.
essentially, a drunken girl wants to stab her boyfriend. I hide the knife. My other friend throws a knife 20 feet in the dark, hits me in the head. I walk across Broadway, stop traffic, make a joke to the woman in traffic, flip out my dad, and then run red lights as the cop threatens me with the knife in my head because he thinks it's a joke. And here I am today.
Wow. Did you have surgery?
Oh, yes. They took me to one hospital and took the x-rays and then took me to another hospital in the Bronx, Montefiore Hospital, which is a huge hospital. And I went in on Monday night and I came out on Friday afternoon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just a remarkable story.
Well, it could have, gone another way.
Certainly.
How would you say that experience changed your life?
It does make you view life in a different way. I mean, as silly as that story sounds, you spend a couple of hours with a knife in your head, and I don't know that it was ever life-threatening, but you didn't know that till after the fact. I mean, I literally had a knife in my head from 7:30 at night to, I don't know, midnight while they were figuring out what to do. And it makes you it makes you be a little more appreciative, I think. It makes you realize how fragile things are.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that it actually does is it opens you up spiritually. See, that area was very close to the pineal gland, and that is the gland that they call the God gland. And when that's been hit, which it had to have been, you had the surgery, it had to have been exposed. And when that happens, you will have spiritual experiences. And I don't believe that that was any accident. It couldn't have been. We choose so many things before we incarnate that is one of those things. You even picked up the knife and put it down. I mean, it's so that's fascinating to me. But I believe that came into your life so you would be able to experience life differently, to view things differently. You really are very Renaissance-y. You're a Renaissance man. And your experiences that I've heard about, I can't wait to have you tell us some more of them, have led you to the spiritual path. And I think it was from that.
I've never heard that take on it. That's interesting that you should say that, because I'm sure you're accurate. It does give you a different perspective. It might even be a comical perspective, but it gives you a different perspective. It kind of, I think, before it was a popular phrase, it taught me not to sweat the small stuff.
True.
You know what I mean?
Because I would think it would have to, change you in some way. I mean, it seems so seemingly random, but it's not. I agree with what you're saying.
No,
that it's just...
It's up there with my head injury. I had a severe head injury, and unlike a knife, I actually had a car. I smashed my head on a car, and that opened me up spiritually. You happen to have a knife. I would have taken the car over the knife.
Most
Any
definitely.
day.
Yeah.
For the record.
Well, mine gave me instant celebrity in South Yonkers. It
Sounds
did.
like you were quite well known before that, though.
well-
I have to say.
Yeah, it was quite a thing. I was wearing a headband, for a while with, bandages. And,
Right.
So it was very fashionable.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, how did you have later in life? Did you go through any experiences that you thought, wow, I would be viewing this differently, or I would have done something differently had that not happened to me, that kind of related back? Or
Probably a lot of things. I've been pretty fortunate, and let me rephrase that. I've been extremely fortunate in my life with this fantastic story of having a knife sticking out of my head. I played football and basketball and lacrosse, and I did all kinds of stuff like that. I never really suffered any kind of an injury. I never really broke anything. I've never been sick other than your basic run-of-the-mill flu or cold. I've been incredibly fortunate. And so what those kind of experiences with, something like with the knife, when my battery died in my car, when my car broke down, instead of flipping out for a couple of minutes, I'd kind of sit back. I probably would flip out for a couple of minutes. I would probably get frustrated, you know. And then I would sit back and just go, okay, wait a minute. It's not a knife in my head.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
that's
You know what? I'm going to say that from now on. A knife in my head.
And you know, it's funny. I hear myself say it, and I don't want anybody to think that I have a comedy routine here, because I'm being very serious. I sit there and go, well, you know what? I don't have a knife in my head. I had that. I know what that's like. I know how scary it is. I can get through this. You know, it's raining out. Okay, I forgot my umbrella. I'll make it home. It's not a knife in my head. You know, and it does make you think in those terms.
Oh my God.
I would guess so. And yeah, I mean, you said that you've been very lucky because you haven't had other than flu. I mean, I would assume that God or the universe said, okay, we gave him a knife in his head. Let's give
Absolutely.
this kid a break.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
For sure.
And I've had, I mean, you know, I've had my share of breaks. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
I thank the universe, God, and the universe every morning, and I'm very serious about that. I make a very conscious effort to say thank you.
Did it affect the way you play? That you play guitar and bass, and you're a left-handed player.
I play upside down, left-handed and upside down.
So say a little bit about that, because that I find fascinating.
Yeah, without getting very technical, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, if you look at a guitar, the thick string, the heavy string is on top, and the skinny string is on the bottom. That's the best way to say it. Left-handed or right-handed,
Okay.
you would play that way.
Okay.
I play left-handed, meaning I'm strumming with my left hand, and the thick string is on the bottom. So it is left-handed and upside down.
And do you just find that more comfortable?
I find it infuriating and extremely expensive because I have to have everything modified and customized, all my instruments. But it's just the way I learned. I picked up, my older brother played guitar when I was a little kid. I picked it up and flipped it upside down and taught myself how to play. So I'm completely self-taught. I don't read music.
Oh, so you taught yourself and you
Yeah.
taught yourself. Did you know that you were teaching yourself incorrectly when you were?
I didn't really, and this is another one of those stories that I know, I hope it doesn't sound too contrived on my part, but I taught myself, I won't even say songs. You know, I was a little kid and I taught myself a couple of things to play. And a friend of mine came over to my house one time and said, you're playing that upside down. You should probably learn to play it properly. If you're going to pursue this at all, you should learn how to play it properly. And my response was, but I already learned these two songs. I'm not going to go back now. You know, that was my that was my perspective back then. I had no idea that I would be doing this for the next 50 years. And I just went, oh no, I'm not going to. I've already put, you know, I've been working on this since Tuesday.
Right.
I'm not going to turn around now. And I just kept going. And I really didn't know any better. And when I started to learn a little more about what was going on, and I started playing out in small clubs and things, again, I realized that a lot of people would come up and say, hey, there's that guy who plays left-handed and upside down. You know, just the entire musical community, it's incredibly competitive. What you have to do to get noticed, I didn't do this on purpose. I mean, you know, and this was in the 70s. You can imagine people were wearing, I mean, ridiculous outfits and lighting themselves on fire and having mohawks and
Right.
whatever they could do to kind of get noticed. And all I did was do what was natural and played upside down and left-handed. And a lot of people said, hey, I know that guy. That's the guy who plays backwards.
Oh, wow. So you
So-
kind of made a name for yourself or something memorable
Yeah.
about yourself without even trying.
Not on purpose,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
So it's a little goofy. There's a couple of us that play like this, but not many. Yeah.
Wow.
That is wild.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Kind
Do you mind? Could you tell us about your experience with George Harrison?
I don't mind. This is one of my favorite stories.
Okay.
I get my share of grief for this because some people, you know, not everybody accepts.
Well, this goes along with the spiritual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, very much so.
And this is how I found out about it. And that's why I was so interested also to have you on. Such a great story.
Well, you know, just kind of fusing these things together, kind of taking this all. I'm a left-handed singing bass player. And the ultimate left-handed singing bass player is Paul McCartney. I'm a huge Beatle fan. I'm a huge Beatle fan. I'm a fan of all four of them separately. I've been in Beatle bands. I just love everything about the Beatles. Back in 2001, in November of 2001, I was sitting in my house in the Valley. And part of this is almost visual, so I know that not everybody's going to necessarily get it. But I was sitting with my girlfriend at the time, and I was reading a newspaper. And she was asking me what I wanted for dinner or something to that effect. And I was kind of half listening, as men do with women.
You were half listening?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Oh, that's so odd.
Maybe less than
I think
half,
it was
actually.
the knife.
Yeah. And so at some point, it's as if I were looking at you and I was kind of reading this newspaper and you were talking, and it almost felt like you got up and walked around the chair and kind of down the hall, and my eyes followed. If you can, I hope I'm making that clear. I kind of was half talking to you like, yeah, well, whatever. And I froze. And I couldn't figure out what I was experiencing. I really, almost like I was in free fall. I just couldn't figure out what had just happened. And I said, somebody just died. Now, I don't have a lot of these experiences. This is not the norm for me. I said, somebody just died. And I proceeded to go further and say, I don't know who it is. It's not a friend. And it's not a family member. But it's someone incredibly close to me. I don't know what made me say that.
So
I
these
have
words
no
were
idea.
just kind of coming out.
And I've spent a lot of time figuring out, trying to figure out, how did I come to that conclusion? Why did I use those words? And I don't know. The answer is I don't know. But I very clearly, very definitively, I guess, I said, it's someone very influential to me. But I know it's not my family, and I know it's not a friend. So I'm not going to start calling everybody in my family saying, is everything all right?
Now, did you say this out loud and your girlfriend was there?
Yes.
Saying,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
What did she say?
Well, she was kind of supportive. She saw the look on my face and realized I wasn't kidding, so that was that. So that night, I'm watching the news, and I'm waiting to see if there's anything on the news, and there isn't. The next day, the same thing. I'm watching. I can't get out of my head that I need some validation here.
Right,
I need somebody to say, this is what happened. Nothing happened. And then later on that day, the news came out that George Harrison had passed away. Now, the trick to the story is this. He didn't die that day. He had died the day before, and what they did was, out of respect, there's a bit of a story there, and that someone else can tell, but essentially what happened was, the bare bones of it is that George Harrison was obviously dying. And I believe Paul McCartney said, your house is being surrounded by paparazzi, and we don't want this to be this way. So they let him go to Paul's house to pass away. So all the paparazzi was waiting over here, and George was a couple of miles that way when he passed away. That's as I understand it. So that's why when it happened on, I don't know if it was a Thursday, I don't know what day of the week, but whatever day it was, the rest of the world kind of didn't hear about it for about 36 hours, and it was very interesting that happened, because as that time passed, I was thinking, oh, I guess I'm wrong.
As it would make you feel.
Yeah, because then, in that time that had passed, I was thinking, well, maybe I saw a flash of light, or maybe I had something in my eye, or maybe I fell asleep for a minute, maybe I was dreaming. You do start to second guess yourself.
Right,
Sure.
yeah.
When they said it was George Harrison, this is my take on it. My take is, I am such a huge Beatle fan. I know there's a billion Beatle fans all over the world, and I'm aware of that. But I'm such an incredibly dedicated Beatle fan. In my mind, what I'm thinking is, I think George on his way out just kind of walked through my house and went, I'm all right.
Later.
Yeah, it's a very comforting feeling to me to think that he
Right.
just passed by and went, hey, keep listening, I'll be okay,
Yeah.
It was a very in-your-face moment for me, because what it did for me is it kind of was that put up or shut up time, where it's, okay, you can talk about spirituality all you want. You can talk about what you believe, what you don't believe. You
Right,
can talk about
right.
what you think is real and fake. This just happened, and you kind of have a witness as to your response to it. You had somebody else in the room when you said this.
Right.
Is this a story that you want to live with? Is this a story that you want to tell somebody?
Well,
And
Yeah.
here's my take on that, because such a great experience that you were able to have. it was a real experience. I believe that you were tuned, your vibration was tuned to that channel, if you will. I mean, your vibration was high. You had already had the knife in your forehead, which I believe opened you up completely to spiritual experiences. And I believe that you were on his same wavelength. And because you were so tuned into that exact wavelength, you were able to see him. You were able to have that experience.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. I don't expect anybody to require more of an explanation from me. You know, I don't know that I could offer one.
So you didn't necessarily see him, but in that moment, these words almost like you were free associating. It sounds like just channeling these words. Someone just died.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. I don't even know what I saw. This is where it kind of gets murky because I don't want to mislead anybody. I didn't see an image. It's almost like if you see something out of the corner of your eye, well, that's exactly what it is. It's in the corner of your eye. You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
If you knew what it is, you'd have full scope.
Yeah.
But my eyes followed as if you were sitting there and you got up and walked through that curtain, and I was kind of like talking, and by the time I got over here, I realized you haven't moved.
Wow.
What was it that walked that way?
Yeah.
So it was kind of spooky, but it wasn't scary. Okay. And I knew right away that there was a calming influence, that it was, no. You know, it's not your family, and don't freak out, and everything's okay.
Right, right. That's so important to note, because I know whenever I've had any experience that I have, the first place I go to, is it my daughter, is it my mother, is it Dawn?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you did that. You went through your people.
Right, my checklist kind
your
of.
checklist.
Checklist
Yeah.
of
Wow.
people. That's amazing.
And you had another really interesting experience before you heard about that you were going to be with Neil Diamond.
I did.
Well, that's a great one.
Yeah.
That one you did tell me, and I think that is such a great one for so many reasons. But before we go to that, tell me the guy who threw the knife. I need to find out.
Your left brain
My
needs to
left
know.
brain just won't let it go.
Is he in
Okay.
jail? Or
Okay,
I'm sure you guys need to know too.
I will say this.
What did he say?
I'm almost positive he's listening.
okay.
He's a police officer.
Oh, wow.
He's a great guy. I
Interesting.
haven't seen him in a long time. When he called me while I was in the hospital, we didn't say much. You know, how are you doing? I said, okay. I came out of the hospital. We hung out. We were still playing stickball and hanging out together. We pretty much never talked about it. To my memory, I could be wrong. It's been a long time, and I haven't
So-
seen him in.
Okay, so
40
wait a minute.
years.
So he may be listening.
I'm
So,
sure he's listening. Yeah.
I'm going to talk to the You mean to tell me that you never said, hey, it was me. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it.
Well, okay.
Left brain won't get it.
I know. No, I know. I know this is
Left
gonna
brain doesn't get
this is
it.
gonna trouble you. She fully accepts the George Harrison thing, but
Right.
this thing is gonna hang around.
That I
correct.
get. That,
Right.
you know, I've been hanging out with this one over here, so I get all that stuff. Doesn't
No,
spook me, nothing.
I wouldn't say he didn't apologize. I wouldn't go that far. We just didn't talk about it. And, you know, I understand your question. It's not that I don't. And I understand your feeling and your reaction to it. For whatever reason, I didn't really require an explanation or an apology. Maybe that says, you know, more about me than about him. But it never crossed my mind to make a bigger deal out of it. I mean, I had enough of an ordeal, you know.
Yeah.
I guess I was okay with it. I don't think, I'm quite sure he was not trying to hurt me by throwing it. I
Well-
think it was a kind of a drunken stupor, wasn't paying attention, you know, whatever.
He was your age too, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I want to be clear that I'm not thinking that it was on purpose, like he was aiming.
Right.
It feels to me that maybe it was like, you know, he wanted to stop you so you would stay hanging out, and it was going to like hit you like this kind of thing, you know, just hit your body and slide down. It's a knife.
Well,
but
here's my
okay,
take
you're
on
15
that.
and you're drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
But
There's nothing else to
but
say.
to not say another, well, okay, I'm just going to have to live with that, aren't I?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Shall we have him as a guest?
Yeah.
What's
If
his
someone,
name, by the way?
I was just saying, I
Never call it.
won't mention his name for his what, Dennis is
Hi,
as far as I'll go.
Dennis.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dennis. But and I'm sure
Dennis?
I'll get a couple of Facebooks.
I think you owe someone just a little something. Just
Or
a
now
little
here's
something.
another way to slant this. Let's expand our view.
Okay.
Maybe because we choose all the big ticket items before we incarnate. perhaps he was, I don't want to say like the Judas kind of guy, but the guy that came in to do this, so you would open up and have a completely different life.
So in fact, all these years, I've never said thank you
So
to
in
Dennis because I owe him.
Exactly.
Wait, so
I
wait.
see now.
In fact, you should be sending him a thank you note.
Yes.
Well,
See, you like that reframe?
The truth is, I love that. No,
I'll
but
send him a bottle of scotch.
There you go. There you go.
So we're good.
the
There you go.
truth is that in my practice, I see over and over again, and even in my own life, where some of the most difficult experiences end up being some of the most life-altering experiences.
Yeah.
So I always say to the people that I see, and to myself as a joke, kind of, okay, we're going to be sending that person a thank you note at some point. So and it kind of goes to show, especially at that age, owning is one of the most difficult things to do, but one of the most powerful things to do. At 15, I can't imagine. I mean, how scary would it be to say, "Hey, it was me, and I'm really sorry." So I get okay.
Their
Dennis,
brains aren't even formed yet.
Dennis, I'm okay. I'm going to
Well, we're all happy about that.
forgive you. I forgive you. I'm okay that you didn't say anything. Left brain doesn't get it, but still, psychologist in me gets it.
I'm
go
very
on.
aware of the psychologist in you. At this moment, I'm incredibly aware of what you do for a
brain is
living.
going, it's going crazy.
I'm not going there.
Yeah.
I've reframed and moved on.
I do understand, though. I really do. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be the first person to say that.
Yeah. It's yeah. So, tell us. You were going to go into the Neil Diamond story, which I want to hear, but I also want to hear kind of, because I was reading your book. Kind of, what was your first paid gig, and how did that feel, and how does it feel to be in front of? I would just think it would feel so amazing to be in front of thousands of people, doing something that lifts them up, that makes them happy, because music is just can change our emotions in a second.
Oh, it's the greatest thing in the world.
I bet.
My first gig, well, I guess I can say this, right? My first gig was in a whorehouse.
Okay,
It was.
lovely.
Once again, I know to a lot of people, you're saying, oh my goodness, this guy grew up in this place, this evil place called South Yonkers where
No.
drunken women carry knives and they're throwing them at you, and cops are yelling at you when you have a knife in your head, and all this stuff. And my first gig was in South Yonkers, and yes, it was in a whorehouse. And we didn't know it and didn't reap any of the benefits of a brothel.
I think
but
it's kind of neat that they have entertainment, live entertainment.
while
in a
you
brothel.
wait,
That's
kind of
good.
while you wait.
There you go.
Yeah, that's really
I,
nice.
at the time, we didn't know it, and the place burned down about 8 hours after we left,
Wow.
which is true. And some years later, one of my rare times in a day job, I worked for a branch of City Hall in Yonkers, and at the time I was 22, and one of the women I was working with was around 60. And she was one of those, she knew everything that happened in the city, And I was telling her this story, and this is back, then. And she said, "Oh, I know the little place you're talking about. It didn't even have didn't have a name. It didn't have a liquor license." And she said, "Oh yeah, that's the place where all the hookers used to hang out. The police knew they were there, and they just kind of, hey, look, as long as you're not dealing drugs or doing anything, we have other things to worry about in a place like South Yonkers. So yeah, you're okay there." And she said, "Oh yeah, that was pretty much common knowledge."
And you didn't
that
know
was-
while you were playing
Had no
there.
idea. Had no idea. I wasn't old enough to drink. I didn't have a driver's license. I walked to this place. I had a guitar that didn't even have a guitar case. I literally was walking down the street with a guitar over my shoulder. It was about a mile and a half.
Oh, that's so funny.
And that was the first gig. My first paid gig was about a year and a half later. We made $25. I couldn't believe that people would pay me.
I was going to say,
To
that
play
must
music.
have felt so amazing.
Oh, exciting.
We
Yeah,
played in a
yeah.
little tiny place in Tarrytown, New York, which is about 45 minutes north of New York City. I played in a place that was maybe 3 times the size of this room, and all of our friends showed up. And if you put 35 people in that, it was like playing to the Colosseum. It was the
Right.
greatest night of my life. And when I fast forward to what I've been doing now for the last year,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
quite a departure.
Yeah.
I play a little game in my head. I really do. When we go for sound check, when I play with Neil Diamond, I've only been doing that for a little less than a year now, and we'll come for a sound check, which means we're in the arena and it's empty. It's 19,000 seats
Yeah.
that will all be full by tonight. That kind of thing,
Right.
and we'll be sound checking in in the empty arena, and I'll look around and I'll see, oh, look at section K45. And I'll count the seats, and I'll say, in that one section, there's 700 seats. Wow. I hadn't played to 700 people total, you know, in some of the clubs I played. I was playing to people, 50 people a night.
Right.
Yeah, I would have to play 12 nights to fill the first section.
Right.
I probably would have to play 5 years to fill this arena once, and we fill it every night.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
So it's quite an awakening. You know, every once in a while, I pinch myself on a regular basis
Right.
on this gig. So
I've been able to watch all the shows on Periscope,
Mm-hmm.
which has been so much fun live, so I can see it live no matter where you guys have been. You've been all over the world.
oh yeah, and going back.
Yeah.
We're going back out in about another 8 weeks.
That's exciting. You're
Yeah.
going to Australia this time.
Australia, New Zealand, and then Australia. Yeah.
How fun.
Great.
Oh, it's the greatest gig in the world.
So tell our listeners how that happened, because this is such a neat story that kind of talks to how when things happen, don't always, get pissed if things don't work out
Yeah.
exactly the way you
Right.
think, right?
Yeah. Well, kind of the side note to this story, which is everything we're talking about, you realize there really are no side notes, right? I mean, what you think is on the periphery is
Right.
sometimes dead center.
Yeah.
I lost my folks back in 1988. Both of my parents died within 56 days of each other.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that you deal with. My family's still to this day very close. My parents were the greatest people in the world. I had a wonderful relationship with both of them. So I talk to myself all the time. When I'm in the car, when I'm sitting in traffic on the 405, I talk to myself constantly. I very often talk to my folks. I check in with them, and
Good.
I'm very conversational. You know, I certainly do my share of prayer, but hey Dad, how you doing? That kind of thing. You know. So here comes September 22nd of this past year of 2014. I had been on tour with the British Invasion Act, which was this great tour that I did. A lot of the old British Invasion guys from the Hollies and Peter Asher from Peter and Gordon. And it was just a wonderful collection of people, Chad and Jeremy. This is going back to, I don't know how much of your audience remembers these people, but in 1964, they all sold millions of records. And so it was just the greatest time. I flew in that morning. I flew back to L.A. I got in L.A. around noon. And the reason that part of the story is important is because I got off the plane, I'm running around, and I'm doing laundry and going to the bank, all the things that I haven't done for a couple of weeks because I've been on tour. I haven't eaten, I haven't slept. I just got off a plane. My ears are still popping, all that stuff. And about 4:30 in the afternoon, I'm going to see a friend of mine who is doing this kind of seminar at a local college, Cal Arts, which is in Valencia, which is up by Magic Mountain in the Los Angeles area. I know exactly where it is. I've been there 100 times. I drive past it every day. I go to see my friend. I can't find the place. I drove around for at least 20 minutes. I might be giving myself a little wiggle room there because it really might have been 45 minutes. I could not find the building that I've been to, that I know where it is. It's a college campus. It's not like I'm looking for some address. I was so frustrated, I thought I was losing my mind. I pulled into a mall, like an outdoor parking lot. And I pulled over, and after being frustrated for quite a while, I pulled over and just sat in the car for a second and took a deep breath, which is really hard for me to do sometimes. I don't do that as well as other people do.
Yeah.
And I took a deep breath, and I said out loud, I went, okay, Dad, I don't know what's going on. Why can't I find this place that I know exactly where it is? I've been driving around in circles. I said, Dad, what's the takeaway here? That was my phrase. What's the teaching moment? What's the learning moment? What am I going to get out of this?
What a great way to, great perspective.
It is, but I have to really underline that I'm not as good as that as I should be. I don't handle that as well. I'm sure I was screaming and yelling and making illegal U-turns a lot. I was not sitting there. I was not in the Zen pose.
Zen. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I was losing my mind, and I pulled in, and I said that. And I actually said out loud, I went, okay, what's the takeaway here, Dad? So I waited a second and kind of got myself situated and started to pull out of this parking lot. And I'm going to make a turn to go back and look for this mythical college campus that I can't seem to find. And the phone rings. Now, I'm sitting there, I have my, Bluetooth kind of thing. It's falling out of my ears. I'm still looking for this address. I'm getting frustrated again, and I'm getting back into the bad zone where I'm getting frustrated. Some guy's talking to me, and I can't hear what he's saying. My earpiece is falling out. So I said to him, listen, I'm going to ask you to hold on for a second. I pulled back into almost the same space, the same parking space that I just pulled out of. I said, you're going to have to forgive me. My ears are stopped up because I just got off a plane. My earpiece is falling out. I'm kind of having a tough day. My name is Bill. Can you start talking again? Can we start this again? And the voice at the other end of the phone says, yeah, so as I was saying, we're looking for a bass player, and you come highly recommended. That's what he said, word for word. That's what he said. And I kind of giggled and said, you said, as I was saying, I didn't hear you the first time. So I'm starting halfway through this conversation. Can I ask who the band is? Who's looking for me? And there's kind of a dramatic pause, and the voice says, Neil Diamond. Then there was another dramatic pause because I was waiting for the next word to be tribute, right? There's a Neil Diamond tribute band. It's like, hey, I'll make $150 a night. This will be great. And that is the absolute truth. I waited, and that word never appeared. So I said, how did you get my number? And we talked about it, and it turns out that Neil had just finished a new record called Melody Road. Is it okay if we...
Absolutely.
We'll give that a little plug. It's a great record.
Great record.
Fantastic record. Called Melody Road. They had just done that, and they were doing a promo tour. And after the promo tour, they were doing this world tour, and they were looking for a bass player to do the world tour. And I said, well, okay, I'm certainly interested. The producer of the record Melody Road is a fantastic producer by the name of Don Was. And Don, I kind of know him. I don't know him real well. He is now my best friend, though, because he's pretty much responsible for getting me this gig. He said, no, we have you were recommended by Don Was. In the next 3 hours, Neil's management called me back, I think it was 5 times. And I kept those phone calls, by the way. I have them still in my phone. I'm still holding them.
That's funny.
And called me back 5 times saying, hey, can we talk to you this week? Can we do this? Can we do that? And the last phone call was at 9 o'clock at night, or a little after 9 o'clock at night, was, look, I know this is a lot, but can you come in tomorrow and audition at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? And they said, I know that we're not giving you any charts or any CDs ahead of time, but can you just come in? And I said, sure, because I'm from New York, and this doesn't scare me, and I've had a knife in my head, so,
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
whatever it is not going to be a knife in the head,
Right.
And I went down there and auditioned, never expecting to get the gig. Never expecting to get the gig. I went down and auditioned for about 45 minutes. I met Neil. He's the greatest guy in the world. He was incredibly gracious. And he said, yeah, we don't need you for this promo tour that they do television shows and radio shows, but maybe come back and we'll audition you, do a proper audition for the world tour in March. And I said, okay. And I went home and got a phone call about 2 hours later from the management saying, we really liked what we heard. Can you leave on Sunday?
Wow.
This was Tuesday evening. Can you leave on Sunday to do the promo tour? So we flew to New York and London, and we did the Tonight Show and the Today Show, and we did the BBC. We played twice at the London Palladium. It was unbelievable.
That's fantastic.
And as that was going, it was moving at breakneck speed, because I essentially got a phone call on a Monday night, went down on Tuesday, did a quick rehearsal for 3 hours on Thursday, and was on a plane on Sunday.
Wow.
Somewhere in there, when the dust was settling, I started to realize, that Monday night, I was driving around in circles. I was on my way to this kind of seminar thing where when you walk in, you turn off your phone.
Right.
They tell you, like when you go to the movies or when you go to church, you turn the phone off. You can't,
Right.
we don't want a bunch of phones ringing. Had I gotten there on time, had I not gotten lost, if you want to call it that, that I would have been in that seminar for 4 hours without checking my phone, Neil Diamond's management would have probably called me another 2 times and said, forget it, let's find somebody else. I mean, that's, I don't know. I don't know that would have happened, but it kind of felt like everything was pointing in that direction, that I looked back and I thought, I remember pulling into that parking lot saying, Dad, please give me an idea what's going on here, because I'm about to lose my mind. Like, what good could possibly come out of me being so incredibly frustrated, and I'm ready to scream, and my earpiece is falling out, and everything was going against me, that I was thinking, how could this get any worse at this moment?
That
and 90
is,
seconds
you've
later.
described exactly what a guide does for us. So guides on the other side, whether there are spirit guides or family guides, like in your case, your father, what they do is they keep us on our path. They keep us going exactly where we're supposed to be. So I always use the example, if spirit guides, let's say you're going to go to the store, you're going to go, buy some bread. And as you're driving, you get this odd feeling, or you could get a flat tire, something that puts you in front of a Starbucks, and you run into somebody that you need to meet that furthers your entire life. And that's really what happened here. Your guide, your dad, did exactly what he was supposed to do.
Yeah,
he
I
kept
guess
you
he did.
exactly right there, as frustrating as it must have been. It's a great story.
Yeah, it is a great story, but
We should ask the rest of the band how they feel about me being there. Maybe
I think they all love you.
Oh, well, that's
I'm
good.
sure of it. But that is so neat to have taken, even in your frustration, to have kind of taken a moment to take that, that perspective of, okay, what's the message here? Because it didn't make sense to you
Yeah.
to not find this college that you've been to so many times.
Yeah, and I will, I always really feel the need to say that I was not always of that mind.
Yeah.
I was not always that easy on myself. I did not always take the time to take a deep breath and think about it.
So what shifted? How did you become more like that?
Some of it was gradual, but some of it was, there was the knife in my head. There was losing both of my parents within 56 days. Yeah, that was one of those things that again, it just makes you realize, on one hand, how fragile life is, and what you should take seriously and what you shouldn't take seriously. I think I've always kind of been one of those people that intuitively knew a little bit about vibration, just because I played music for a living. That's the best communication in the world is music, and music is, everything about music is technically vibration.
Yeah.
It's moving through air, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there was a line of demarcation where I jumped over the fence and went, hey, I'm spiritual now. But I think there was that time from somewhere between being like 28 and 35 years old that I kind of thought, hey, maybe I should let go of some of this anger stuff. Maybe I shouldn't be such a street kid because I'm a little too old for that. Maybe I can take the art of living a little more seriously and not be so serious about stuff that you don't need to spend much time on.
Yeah. That is what, and it takes us a moment to really think about that and do it purposefully. I mean, we can't, it's difficult to change something because, the brain likes what's familiar, and so we continue to do it. And when we take a step back and think about things and purposefully start to change the way we think, then we can incorporate different.
And and his traumas, your traumas were pretty great. I mean, yes, we can laugh about the knife in the head, but losing both parents did you say within 60 days?
Yeah, 56 days.
That's shocking.
Yeah, that is really shocking.
It's funny. I'm being asked to stay an extra hour. This is fantastic.
That's
is that
lovely.
Did I misunderstand that sign? I might have misunderstood. That's my fault.
You said something about it's Elvis's.
Elvis, the anniversary of Elvis's death today. Yeah.
38 years? Is that what it was?
Something. Was it 1977?
Amazing. He was my favorite, and when he died, I can't remember how old I was, but my sister tells me that I never listened to another record again. I was so angry at him that he had died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I'm a little weird, folks. So I want to plug your book, which
Please
is
do.
hilarious.
So interesting,
The
so
Amazing
fun.
Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. I'd say a little more than marginally, but okay. So I'm putting it up here so people can see it, whoever's watching live, and pick it up. It is, where can they pick it up?
You can go to my website. It's the easiest. It's billcinque.com.
Okay, and that's BILLCINQUE.com.
Yes.
Okay, it's hilarious. It's like talking to you. I'm reading it. I was reading it at home, and it's like talking to you the way that you write. It's
Only you can close
hilarious.
the book.
Well,
You can't always shut me up.
What made you write the book? How did that come about?
Part of it was, I know bookstores are almost going the way of the dodo bird at this point, but when you would walk into a bookstore, if you would walk into the music aisle, what they would call the music aisle, I saw 20 books from lawyers saying how to make $1 million in the music business. I saw other books about some rock star, who he slept with, how much money he made, and how many drugs he used. Mm-hmm. And I never saw anything that related to me. And I would watch television, and musicians are depicted as two kinds of people. There's the rock stars, mm-hmm. and then there's this poor, pathetic idiot who's sleeping on his,
So true.
his girlfriend's couch, and he's rehearsing in the garage, and everybody, he's such an idiot because he's never going to get any place. And I was kind of insulted by both, because I thought, there's a lot of us in the middle that really, we pay our taxes, we drive on the right side of the road, we vote,
Right.
yeah.
We have an education. Mm-hmm. We're not rich, but we're not poor. I'm not living off anyone else. I'm self-employed. Mm-hmm. And as I was looking at that, I thought, wow, there's this tremendous gaping hole, not just for musicians, for people that know musicians, which essentially is everyone, right? If
Yeah.
you're not in music, you know somebody, you listen to it, you watch it.
Right.
And I thought, I wonder what would happen if someone like me, not someone who sold 1 million records, not someone who's a rock star, mm-hmm. just someone who essentially plays with rock stars. Mm-hmm. Someone who, a great example, we're talking about Neil Diamond, who I have to say is just one of the greatest guys in the world. I played with Neil Diamond at the O2 Arena in London on Sunday night, mm-hmm. whatever that was, July 27th. Yeah. 5 days later, I was playing at a little wine bar in Valencia called Wine 661 to 35 people.
Yeah.
That's my life, and I'm very proud of it. I don't make any apologies for it. I don't make any excuses for it. I'll go back and forth. It's kind of crazy, but that's my life. And I thought that was worth mentioning, and I thought it was worth putting it in a book form, and I thought it was worth saying, hey, you know what? It's not all fun and games. It's not all pitiful. It's not all about money. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of other ways you can gauge your success in the world of music other than how much you get paid.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of all of these topics, and I was thinking, well, how come no one has written about this? And the couple of guys that tried it, I don't want to say they didn't do it well. I don't mean from a commercial standpoint. It's just they didn't live my life.
Right.
I mean, when I'm telling you my first gig was in a whorehouse,
Right.
and now I'm playing
And
to
now you're with
19,000
Bill-
people
Bill-
3 times a week with the
Yeah.
greatest songwriter in American history. I don't know that there's too many people that could tell that story.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, it is a very funny book. I mean, I found myself laughing out loud in a few things. It's just like
good.
talking to you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
Well,
it's,
thank you.
it's
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you. No, this is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
They are just loud and proud and wanting to.
Well, because they're expecting the second half of the show now. I'm ready. I'll change my shirt and come back.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for joining us.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
having
for
me.
listening, and we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye for now.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo Dr. Shirley and Kelly White. Two perspectives, one world.
Do we have a word count?